I am the author of the forthcoming book, Scared Sitless, the Office Fitness book. That'll be out at Amazon on September 29th and be available in bookstores sometime this October. I also run the website sitless.com, where you can find an archived version of this interview and lots of other information about office fitness. I'm really excited to have on the show today Chris Goodine. He's the director of developer Evangelist for Thalmic Labs in Waterloo, Canada, up near Toronto. I met Chris a couple weeks ago here in Seattle at the Seattle Tech Meetup, where he did this really cool demo where he operated a drone in the theater where we were meeting with the Thalmic Myo, the device we're going to talk about today. So let me let Chris introduce himself. I'll have him talk a little bit about what he does as a developer evangelist, what the Myo is, a little bit about Thalmic Labs, and then we'll go from there. So Chris, tell us what you're up to.
Well, thanks, Larry. Thanks for having me. I believe you gave me a pretty good intro as it is, but just to expand on it a little bit more, I am a developer evangelist here at Thalmic Labs, and my primary goal is really to grow out the developer community. The Myo armband, which we'll talk about in just a minute, is built as an open platform, and really we leverage developers who are interested in kind of exploring the possibilities of this device. So my main goal is to go around to meetups like the Seattle Tech Meetup, which you mentioned, or developer conferences, that sort of thing, and just educating developers about what the product is, what it can do, and ultimately get them psyched to see the possibilities come to life with this device.
Yeah, when you start by flying a drone around a theater, that's a pretty good way to engage people. I saw a lot of enthusiasm.
Yeah, flying a drone with your hands is pretty neat.
Now you're set up there, so you can give us a little demo right now, right, to show us kind of how the Myo works and
so
the basic idea.
My other screen. I'll talk about the device itself. So this is it. This is the Myo armband. What's really interesting about this device is it's a gesture control device. So gesture control, there are solutions out there. You've likely heard of the Microsoft Kinect or the Leap Motion controller. This is just like a really cool space today because it really looks back at the way humans interact with everyday objects, and they really question, like, why don't we use our hands when we interact with our computing world or with digital technologies? So the Leap Motion, Microsoft Kinect, they try to solve that. They want the user to be able to use their hands to manipulate, their computing devices. So Thalmic Labs, we're very similar. Like we have that same goal. We want users to be able to use their hands to control digital technologies. The main difference between us, though, is that we think that based on the trends of computers, we went from desktop to laptop to the smartphone, and now we're moving into the wearable computing space. We believe that mobility is a really important piece here, and unless the gesture control solution accounts for mobility, it won't necessarily work with the way the computing trends are moving. So our solution is very similar. It gives you gesture control, and it does so in a mobile fashion. So just by wearing it.
One of the things I'm excited about with this is for example, some of the criticism, or not criticism, an observation about touch screens is that it's cool. It's sort of I'm kind of mimicking it now. You can reach out and touch your computer, but you have to reach out to touch it. You have to reach out. Whereas with the Myo, you can just gesture and keep your hands tucked in.
That's right.
Is that something that is appealing to developers and users at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right. And either touch screens where you actually have to reach out and touch your screen, or the Leap Motion controller where you have to sit there and hover your arm over a controller that's at your desk. Right. They're fantastic solutions, but I don't think that they necessarily account for fatigue. A user that's using this solution over time will get tired. They'll want to rest their hands, and that's ultimately going to lower performance. Or sometimes, like a far reach, there's a lot of ergonomic studies that will say that an extended reach is not healthy over long periods of time.
Right, exactly. And well, the other, so there's a lot of ergonomics things that this could help with, so that, and has, I guess, well, actually, let me back up from there a little bit too. What are your developers excited all about the ergonomic stuff, or are they mostly doing like really cool game stuff and things like that? Or, well, I guess, how would you break down the developer interest in productivity tools versus like fun stuff?
Yeah, you see a lot of ideas all over the place. I mean, the applications that I've been seeing, or at least the ideas that I've been seeing and hearing about, really span across the productivity world, the gaming world, and really just kind of like, now that we have this technology, what can we do? So speaking to the productivity world, an interesting thing is that if you have your mouse and keyboard, you are kind of positioned right here and you can use the device, but there may be some times where you want just like a fine control, and maybe like say you're using your mouse on your right hand, and then your left hand has a myo armband. You could kind of look for fine control and maybe like grab the image and pan it, and then use your mouse and continue to do that. And you can do that while resting your arm on the table like that. Or if you're browsing, you can do simple swipes like this while you use your keyboard and mouse.
Now that's interesting. So I hadn't thought about that, to be honest. So this is a yes and thing. You still can use it. You can operate alongside your other pointing devices, your mouse or your trackpad and your keyboard, along with the Myo.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nice. Okay.
In some ways, like we do have the ability for the user to control their cursor. Like for example, if they're sitting at their couch and they're playing the next episode of Game of Thrones from their laptop coming out of the HDMI port. In this scenario, you probably want to have control over the cursor, direct control over the cursor, select your next file, play it on VLC, and then be able to use the media controls with the arm. But in a scenario that we just described, you want to have both the mouse and your arm for gesture control. So you can do that. It can work in unison with existing input devices.
I'm sorry, Chris, did you hear that last question?
I just came back. So was it where I'm not sure exactly.
So I'm saying you mentioned the person sitting on the couch at home, and another classic home application is like the Wii Fit or the Kinect Play Fit kind of things. Are developers getting excited about doing sort of exercise applications like that? Are there things in the works there?
Yeah, there are things in the works there. So the neat thing about the armband is that it can monitor motion like over time, right? So if I were to move my arm up and down or outwards like this, you can have a very well-defined tracking of your arm over time. So in terms of like exercise applications, like if you're doing jumping jacks, you not only know that the person is doing a jumping jack, but you can also monitor the height of the jumping jack, right? Whether or not they use it going all the way up to their top, or if they're kind of giving up and only doing half jacks.
Okay. One of the, not criticisms, but an observation about both like the Kinect controller and one of the benefits I've heard of the Leap Motion over the Kinect is that there's more granular control with the Leap Motion over the Kinect. Where would you put the Myo in that spectrum from in terms of like how sensitive and how detailed it is? Yeah.
Sure. So in terms of sensitivity, there really is a couple of things with the armband. So within the device, it has a a 9-axis motion sensor, and that will understand the orientation of the device over time. This measurement has a fraction of a degree of accuracy, so just a small adjustment can be detected by the device. And the orientation data is relatively stable, or it's very stable, I should say. So over time, you'd be able to like monitor the motion completely without any issue of drift or inaccuracies. Another benefit is that you don't have a field of view. So some of the criticism you may have heard is that if you're working, like say you're doing jumping jacks in front of your Kinect and you kind of skip off to the side a little bit and you get out of the field of view of the camera, well, it no longer can detect you. In this case, the armband, because it doesn't use a camera system, it will remain in that monitoring state throughout that, even if you do move around or move to different rooms or whatever. You can do it outside and you'd still be able to have similar.
Right. The Simpsons have already done a cautionary tale about that. Do you remember the episode where Homer is hooked up with sensor gadgets and goes in the restroom? Anyhow, just a caution for Mayo users out there. Hey, so that level of granularity and the fact that it can watch you. There's other gadgets like Philips Electronics created a monitor. I think it's only available in Europe, but it includes a gadget like a camera that looks at you and analyzes your posture as you're computing. There's also things like the Lumo Lift and other posture monitors.
Sure.
Is anybody working on posture kind of assessment and evaluation stuff?
I mean, none of these applications have actually been like finalized just yet, but there are some development in certain areas, not necessarily back posture, but more so in arm posture. So when you type with the keyboard, it's very important to sort of keep an eye on the angle that you're kind of attacking the keyboard. If you have the keyboard very close towards you, you're coming in very high and you're bending your hands like this against the thing, and that puts a lot of strain in your forearm muscles, your wrist muscles, that sort of thing, and that will ultimately lead to carpal tunnel or other issues similar to that.
That's a great, I hadn't thought about that, but that one of the main gadgets that makes the Maya work is that real-time electromyography that actually looks at that. So you could actually look and go, whoa, Larry, you've been extending your wrist for a long time. Maybe you should adjust your posture, to your ergonomic setup. So you could do that, right?
Yeah, so we do. I mean, that capability is not available in the public SDK, but we do have a research SDK that exposes the raw EMG data, and it would
oh wait, I'm just going to quickly interject for the non-technical viewers that SDK stands for Software Developer Kit. So that's what these cool developers are using to make this stuff that Chris is talking about. Sorry, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so the Software Developer Kit that is publicly available. We try to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So rather than giving you a feed of EMG data that you'd have to process yourself, and it could be slightly overwhelming, we classify those gestures for you, and we basically say, the user is making a fist, or they're waving out, or they're waving in. But for research bodies or larger companies, we have a research SDK that actually exposes the raw EMG sensor data. And that data will show levels of high activation in your muscles at certain points in time. So for example, if you do have a poor posture in terms of your wrists as you type, you'll start to notice high readings on certain muscles, and the device could potentially send an alert to your PC to say like, hey, look out, you're putting too much stress on your muscles while you're typing. You might want to adjust your position.
Hey, one question about that. We talked a little bit about this when you were here in Seattle, but I can't recall exactly which muscles it's evaluating, because they're both, and I'm going to put my hand up to show, there's both the flexion and extension issue, and then there's also what we call radial deviation and ulnar deviation. Well, I did those backwards, but you get the idea. There's both flexion, extension, and sideways movement. Is the Thalmic, I mean the Myo, is it measuring each of those dimensions?
Yep, so on the device itself, I'll try and hold it up for the camera.
I can see it fine, it looks great.
That's good. So what you're seeing there, each one of these pods are an EMG sensor. So that sensor is similar to what you would see in a medical setting. You see those circular electrodes on a patient's heart or on their chest monitoring their heart activity. Basically what they're doing is they're looking for the small electrical signals that are propagated to the surface of your skin when your heart or any other muscle contracts. So we have 8 of those sensors along your arm, and because they're distributed evenly along your forearm, we actually do see the electrical signals that are produced when any of the forearm muscles are activated. Some forearm muscles are a little bit larger than others, so they'll produce higher signals that we can detect more easily. But we do have the visibility into all activations using these EMG sensors.
Yeah.
So, but our main concern really is not to like say, your flexors or your extenders are active. It's more so to see like the areas and the particular patterns that are showing up, and that helps us understand what you're doing with your hands.
Gotcha. And clever developers, if somebody did take an interest in that more advanced SDK that you talked about would give them the data that they could do almost whatever they wanted, it sounds like, to measure what you're doing with your hands.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's the big thing. The traditional the public SDK that's on our website that anyone can download, it really positions the Myo as a gesture controller. So you make a fist and that will trigger an action, or you wave right and that'll trigger an action. But the research SDK really treats Myo as a sensor. So let's have a look at your muscles. Let's look for certain patterns, and that can be used for a number of different things: medical, fitness, posture monitors. Those are just small examples of what you can do if you actually have a look at your muscles.
Now, what's the most exciting thing that you see on the horizon? You're out there talking to all these developers. There must be a huge amount of activity. What's really grabbing you? And it doesn't have to be about office fitness. If you want to geek out about Hey, Chris, you still there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
We had a technical glitch. It looks like my connection is okay, but it kind of kicked me off of here for a little bit. Anyhow, I'm not sure exactly what we'll see in the broadcast, but it's still showing that the broadcast is going here. So anyhow, I apologize. Oh, I was just asking you, like, what's the funnest, coolest, niftiest thing you're seeing out there?
I would say it really depends. Like, I mean, if I want to get all geeky in here, but the really exciting thing that I'm starting to see is that people are starting to look past what exists today and looking into what will exist tomorrow. So you know, it's nice that the Myo can control your PowerPoint from your computer, or maybe your cursor, maybe your music on your phone, that sort of thing. Like, these are all great applications that you can use today. But really, once you start to see where computing is going, those are the applications that really work well with the Myo. Like, for example, Google Glass integration. We just released an initiative that basically builds out the support for Myo and Google Glass, and we're just seeing like countless applications in that realm. So wherever there's a scenario where it makes sense to have information like right in your face, for example, if you're a foreman in a factory and you're referencing your bill of materials or something like that, and it's right in your, having that right in your face is really efficient, so that they don't have to get up. They're always accurate because they know exactly what's next. Exactly. These are like really great applications, but part of the reason why they're not being adopted is because glass doesn't necessarily work in those environments. The foremans have gloves on, so they can't touch the touchpad on the side, and the factory is way too noisy, so you can't do the voice input. So in this case, the Myo is actually one of the most ideal solutions for that, because they can use gestures and control it just as effectively, if not more effectively, than using touch or voice. And it doesn't intrude with their hands, so that they can continue working. So it's a really fantastic thing, and that opens up a lot of doors. Similarly, integrations with Oculus Rift. You know, entering a virtual world and having your hands in there, thanks to the Myo armband, is a really exciting, you know, potential.
Right, the Oculus Rift is just, it's like a helmet that you put on that totally immerses you in a virtual environment, but it doesn't have gesture control as part of it. You would be like a way to augment that system.
Yes, yes. So you would, by wearing, you can wear an armband on both your left and right arm, and then have your arms in that environment. So you can reach out and grab something, or you can control things as you would in your everyday.
So we're very close to that Minority Report thing with Tom Cruise grabbing things out of the air, and
pretty close, yeah. That's really Tom Cruise actually had part in our inspiration. You know, like seeing Minority Report, we're like, how do we do that? That would be awesome.
Oh, nice, cool. Well, hey, I see we're getting pretty close on time. I know we got started a little late because of the technical glitches. Sorry about that. And
no problem.
Like, it's almost 6:30 Friday for Chris, so I really want to thank you for enduring this the technical glitches and sticking with us. But hey, one last question: is Myo the only product that Thalmic Labs is doing, or do you guys have other stuff in the works? Oops. Oh, I just lost Chris again. Sorry about that. I'm not seeing him coming back. Let me try and switch over to Chris's. Yeah, I apologize for the technical glitches, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and just wrap up for on Chris's behalf, because it's been a long week for both of us. And so again, my apologies for the technical glitches. And I'll clean this video up. We'll see what we end up with in the YouTube archive of this Hangout. And just want to, again, thank Chris Goodine at Thalmic Labs for his time today, and invite you to stay tuned. Go to sitless.com and you can sign up for the newsletter, which will announce subsequent interviews and other activities that I'm up to. And thanks again for your time, and stay tuned for the next Office Fitness interview. Bye-bye.